All right. Original solo of the here. All right, Ms. McNear, you poll council.
Mr. Anderson?
Present.
Mrs. Gantos? Here. Mr. Hawkins? Mr. Ramirez?
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Present.
Mr. Vanover?
Present. Council, first thing we have is the minutes of our June 15th meeting. Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion. Motion second. Discussion. All right, all those approving the June signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved with 7 affirmative votes. All right, first off, under ordinance and resolutions, we have resolution R13. Oh, I'm sorry, jumped. Communications. Ms.
Nothing.
McNear.
Nothing this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, and at this point, we'll open for communications from the audience. Anybody in the audience like to address council for any reason? There should be a panel. List your name and address, please.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Daniel Matt. From my childhood on West Sharon Road, then I lived on Silverwood Circle, and now I live on Springdale Lake Drive. So I've essentially been here all my life. I just wanted to briefly address the potential transition of the Springdale Community Center over to the Tri-County area and what I think are important points to keep in mind. So as I understand it, and these are rough numbers, so I'm not trying to be too exact, but I think my point will get across. Our city is adding the following units to 3 locations, about 100 units at Merchant Street, 200 at Sheraton Lane, 2,000 to 2,500 at Tri-County. Is that kind of close? Okay, just in rough numbers. All right. This is all rental property that will attract many short-term residents, possibly some long-term, but largely short-term. If the fitness center and pools and gyms are used as a draw for new residents, then these represented members of this facility at the Springdale Community I think is around 1,500. This number could easily double in the foreseeable future, and possibly even beyond that. So are we being realistic about the future influx of people and the sharing of space in our community center is my question. And who are we as a community, and what are we building our community around? Can't help but care and want the best for the community opinion. I think that do the long-term community at the center of them, as it is offering a families that bring all of the SAY first have I played and then coached with my kids through multiple seasons, outdoor activities that bring multiple cultures and age groups together. The kids, community sports and games. If everything that our community center means to us as the center for our community, then we cannot rightly let go of our current facility in favor of a new one. That will quickly be used up by the new majority of membership. If the proposed young single professionals want to run men's leagues, basketball, 4 or 5 nights a week, then where are the teens going to go to play basketball, especially in the wintertime? What will the summer be like with the outdoor pool? What will the daily and of the community center be the disjointed system? Propose that we maintain our more or less in full with the TIF funds obtained from the management center, regardless of where you all decide to put your office space. This will alleviate the need for much work residents to the mall location, the much to the community.
Thank you, Mr. President, for coming. Appreciate all of your crew in Springdale. I'm just quickly came in. Any neighborhoods in or get worried about that? What is from us? It was the same thing I heard over there. What is going to be? We have a bigger facility that we're moving to. We have different. The same. Luckily, staying open as far as move over if that's our fields are still going to be there. The kids will still be able to play there. That is going to be there. I want everyone to understand that these people that are coming in are still going to be Springdale citizens. They're still going to be our neighbors, whether they live next door to you or they live at the new communities that we're building, or not we, that the developers are building. I want everybody to understand that if we keep saying these people aren't real Springdale people, they're never one either. I know a lot of you guys are good people. I feel like I'm a good no matter what anybody else thinks about person. I want these people to understand that when they come to Springdale, they're coming to a community that loves everybody who lives here. You don't always have to like them, not even close. But we're all in this together. We are all Springdale citizens. We all have a right to a community center, whatever it looks like. Decision. This is something that I hope nobody else up here takes lightly. I know I haven't. I've heard from. We want together. This is centralizing it kind of more because Heritage Hill has been apart over there for so long, and I've heard how they felt disconnected. This might bring them a little closer to us. This might bring us all. We don't even. If we do, I hope that everybody does give a chance who are moving to Springdale are still residents of Springdale. Yes, it will be an influx. Absolutely. We would be lying if we said it wasn't going to be. There'd be something, whether it's 2 or 2,500, we don't know. I kind of like the idea with all of these new places going in that we do have the bigger facility as far as like the workouts and places like that, because that gives more people more opportunity to do things, as opposed to here they would be stuck with what we have now. Older, outdated gym equipment, smaller facilities. This does make it bigger. We do have the year-round pools in the plan that would help give activities for every around families and the kids and stuff could do different. Never not listen to opinions. I will listen to what it is that you're trying to say. I think it's important, but I think it's also important that other people listen what other people are saying too, and that maybe in the middle we could find some happy ground. That's all I'm asking, and I do appreciate you coming more than you know and saying your piece. That's awesome. I hope that you understand what I'm saying, because I know that you are a good person. I only want to speak to you personally because I've known you for a long time. I know that you're a good person. I know that that's not what you were saying. I want to be very clear. But I do hope that when this new influx of people comes, that everybody in Springdale remembers that we are all neighbors. We're all in this together, one way or the other. That's just my piece. Thank you so much.
Mr. Anderson.
President, I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Messer for coming in and sharing his thoughts on the community center. It's obviously something that's getting a lot of time. We had a number of sessions for community engagement. I know your family was well represented there and continues at the meetings, and then as we work through this. Just a couple thoughts, though, just to understand where we're at. One, I agree with Ms. Sullivan-Weisskopf. I think it's great when people come forward and tell us what they think about it. I'd encourage not just you, but everybody to do that. And it doesn't have to be at these meetings. You can share your ideas and concerns, questions about this change, this development to any of the elected representatives up here. We're all, our phone numbers and emails are posted on the website, and we're available to answer those questions. I know I've fielded a few of them myself. I think it's important to remember that the numbers you gave, the 100, 200, and 2,000, that's end state type numbers for these developments. Tri-County Mall specifically is a big phased installation. What was recently approved at the Planning Committee was about 500 units. It would be in phase 1, which carries through for a couple years. After that, they've talked about coming back and doing more. So between that phase 1 and the near term, what we can plan for, you're talking about 800 to 900 units, which is about, 1,200 people-ish, depending on occupancy and room rates. Springdale currently has 11,000 residents, so you're talking about, a 10 to 12% increase in our size. That type of increase has been managed by a lot of communities. As census just recently happened, you saw a lot of areas. Hamilton's been growing at bigger rates than that. Hamilton County's been growing at bigger rates. So these kind of rates are manageable, I think. It is a big change that we're talking about, but it's not going to happen all at once. And I think so much, these aren't residents that would be welcome. I think just in our nature, we're going to welcome everybody as they come. Things like swim leagues and swim teams and adult basketball leagues. I think that's great. It's exciting that we can get people excited to be here. But I think the challenge that is how do we that vision, that timeline over time, right? We've talked about this community center move as a one-time thing, right? We're going to make a decision. Everybody's asking, when are we making the decision? We've talked about timelines for that, and we're going to continue to have meetings and discussions about it. But I think what's important is what happens after that decision. Either if we stay or go, I think we owe it to the community to talk about how we're going to maintain the current facility and that new one as it changes and evolves as people come in. When it opens, it's not going to be 800 to 1. It's going to. So how do we grow our service? But police, fire, public works, all. So I think what I hear from that is that the community is still very engaged on this decision, and that's great. But the challenge I hear from it is how do we communicate what we see happening right after that, right? What's going to happen to the current building if it moves, or how do we maintain it or expand on it? There's nothing that says that we can't take that current facility we have and grow it to meet the needs of those new residents too. Those are still all on the table. So I'll leave it at that, but say thank you for the feedback. If you have more, specifically as we go through design, as we work through that, let us know what your concerns are. I firmly believe that more people that ask questions will challenge us to do a better job investigating, and I think that's important. So thank you for coming out and sharing your concerns. I share a lot of them. I think that we are moving in the right direction. I know administration's worked very hard over the past several months trying to figure out how we can do that. The real challenge is a lot of it's happening in the background, and I don't always see it, and you certainly don't always see what's happening. So hopefully we can communicate more of that in the future. But in the absence of information, keep asking questions. They're welcome. I'm happy to take them. We're all happy to take them. Thank you.
Mr. Jacobs.
I wanted to thank you as well for coming out. I know we talked by phone, and I want all the residents to realize, and you can't always just come in and take time out and speak like Mr. Messer did. But if you can't do that, you can also send an email to Ms. McNear that the entire council will hear. It's not that I don't want to receive individual emails. I respond to them. That's great. But I think what you're doing, coming up here to the microphone or sending emails to Ms. McNear, can reach a much wider audience. And as Mr. Anderson said, that puts the right kind of pressure on us, because these are tough calls. The trade-offs for various residents, depending on where they live. Because if in Heritage Hill, this might be a benefit for you. The facility is closer. If you're in District 1 or 2, you might have a 4 or 5 time additional distance to get to this new facility if what we have at the existing center isn't there for you. So these are really tough questions. We're asking the questions. We want to hear more from you guys, so I do appreciate you coming out. I wish I had easy answers for them, but as Mr. Anderson said, this is a long process, and there's a lot of shoes to still drop. But again, I appreciate you coming out. Thanks.
Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also thank you for coming out. It's really important. We are listening. The more people we come out and the more views we hear, the easier it is for us to make a decision. I've been a resident for 52 years. I want the right thing for the residents. I want the right thing for the community going forward as well. But we have to remember is all these new folks moving into our community, they are welcome to use the community center, whether it's at the current location or it's at the new location. So they will have an influx of more people, but going by the numbers you just gave us, it looks like 1.5% of the population actually belongs to the rec center. So going forward, if that happens again, we're adding 120 people if the same ratios stay the same. So I think we need to look at that again. I agree with you. I don't want to be overrun and not have enough facility moving forward if we do move. If we stay where we are, it is what it is, right? And there are a number of things that need to be taken care of at the current facility. I grew up in that facility. I officiated for 25 years. I played softball. My kids did. You know, that's near and dear to my heart, that community center. But I want what's best for the community going forward as well. Thank you for coming in.
Okay, we're still in communications from the audience. Anybody else in the audience like to address council for any reason? Second call. Third and final call. We'll close communications from the audience. At this point, we'll move into ordinances and resolutions. And first off this evening, we have Resolution R13, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Resolution number R13, 2022, a resolution adopting the tax budget of the City of Springdale for the fiscal year January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. Whereas the mayor, the city administrator, and the clerk of council finance director of the City of Springdale, Ohio, have prepared and submitted to council a tax budget for the fiscal year January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, the tax budget. And whereas a public hearing has been conducted on the proposed tax budget with at least 10 days prior notice. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, with members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the tax budget submitted to the council of the City of Springdale, Ohio by the mayor, the city administrator, and the clerk of council finance director for the year January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, a copy of which is attached and incorporated by reference is hereby adopted. Section 2, that the clerk of council finance director is directed to submit the adopted tax budget to the County Budget Commission on or before July 20th, 2022. Section 3, that this council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, this is a resolution and can be acted upon this evening. What's your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I asked to be buzzed in. The agenda does not reflect it, but you're required by Ohio law to have a public hearing in advance, and you did advertise a public hearing for tonight. So it does not reflect it on your agenda that I have in front of you. So I would ask that a member of council make a motion to add a public hearing to the agenda as it was advertised, and hold that public hearing before you move forward with the vote. And the finance director is here as well, obviously, to verify that.
Ms. Weisskopf?
I'd like to make a motion to add a public hearing to this resolution R13, 2022. I had to look.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, motion second, discussion? Ms. McNear, you poll council. Mr. Anderson?
Sorry, I just want to make sure it's clear what we're doing. We need to amend the agenda as well as the ordinance, or the resolution, correct? So it's both things, or just the resolution?
Just amend the agenda. The resolution already reads in the second whereas clause that a public hearing was conducted.
And that was the intent of Ms. Sullivan-Weiskopf's change?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other lights, Ms. McNear, you poll council for the addition of the public hearing to the agenda.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiskopf.
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos. Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins.
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs.
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez.
Aye.
Mr. Vanover.
Aye. Okay, at this point, we'll open a public hearing and welcome anybody that would like to speak either for or against Resolution R1322. I understand we have a presentation.
Good evening. This is the presentation for the tax budget. Oh, what do I gotta do? Touch pad. Okay.
that better?
No.
Hit it again. There we go. Okay. What can I say about the tax budget? Required by the county. The purpose of it is solely to determine, so we're projecting balances at the end of next year, the end of 2023. So the purpose of this for the county is to determine if the county needs to put on additional tax levies for the city. I mean, that's always been the purpose. The question is, where do we get the numbers from? Well, we look at the current budget. We make adjustments as deemed necessary to where we are so far in the year. And then from the prior 5-year budget is where we pull the numbers for 2023, and then any adjustments are made as deemed necessary. In the tax budget, anytime you get monies from the county, whether for property taxes or for payments in lieu of taxes, as with our TIF, then you get a separate sheet. So you'll see the general fund has a separate sheet, Northwest Business or the Victoria TIF, the Tri-County Mall TIF, and the Commerce Park TIF have their own schedules. And then the county just requires that all other funds have a summary sheet for 2023. One thing of interest this year, and a time saver in the general fund, where you'll notice from prior years that for each department there was much more of a breakdown on the expenditure side. This year, and I've confirmed that we could do this through Hamilton County, to present everything just for personal services and then other expenditures, where last year you had personal services, you had capital outlay, you had supplies, those kind of things. It saved a lot of time in the preparation of this to be able to do this at the summary level. Then also we have a schedule that's taken from the 5-year budget activity of capital improvements that are scheduled. And then a schedule, the last page is the schedule of the debt. Are there any questions regarding this document?
You hit them all.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much.
All right, the floor is still open for comments, either for or against. Second call. Third and final call will close the public hearing. Council have heard the reading of Resolution R13, 2022. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt. Second.
All right, discussion? All right, seeing no lights, Ms. McGee, your poll council.
Mrs. Gantes?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye, Resolution R13, 2022 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Next up, we have Resolution R14, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Resolution number R14, 2022, a resolution accepting funds from the state of Ohio for the Capital Appropriations Award to repair and rehabilitate outdoor tennis and basketball courts at 11999 Longview Avenue. Whereas the state of Ohio's biennial capital budget provides appropriations for the repair, reconstruction, and construction of capital assets of various state agencies, colleges, and community projects of local or regional interest. And whereas the city of Springdale requested funds from the state of Ohio's biennial capital budget to be used for the rehabilitation of outdoor tennis and basketball courts at 11999 Longview Avenue. And whereas the city was recommended to be awarded funds totaling $75,000 to be used for the rehabilitation of outdoor tennis and basketball courts. And whereas the city seeks to accept these funds from the state of Ohio and authorize them to be spent for the proposed project. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the city council hereby accepts the funds from the state of Ohio biennial capital budget to be used for the rehabilitation of outdoor tennis and basketball courts at 11999 Longview Avenue. Section 2, city council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk of council, finance director to execute any and all documents necessary to facilitate the receipt and acceptance of the funds for the completion of the proposed project. Section 3, that it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of council concerning and related to the passage of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22. Section 4, this resolution shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, for the reading of Resolution R14, 2022, what is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Motion second, discussion. Mr. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. President. Not that it's going to change my vote, but is there going to be any provision to allow the tennis courts to be used for pickleball as well, conversion?
Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, there is a provision in there. We're going to, Mr. Wilson's plan is to kind of redo some of the courts down there and take out some of the tennis courts and convert those to pickleball courts to get more use. And then put new backboards, new hoops, new asphalt, redo the entire project down there. So we're chiseling away at the iceberg. The 2021 quote we received last year was about $192,000. We've been successful with a Hamilton County grant of about $19,000 and this grant of $75,000. So we're about halfway there. There's 2 other grants that we're pursuing to kind of make this project possible. So we're going to keep hammering away.
Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did have questions on this today, so I'd like somebody in administration or somebody to please help me explain this best. The question was fixing these courts while we are possibly moving over to the Tri-County area. I want, for those people who may not understand, I want to be very clear on what is, if we do go over to the Tri-County location, what will still be at the current facility.
Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll defer to the mayor first, and then I'll
Mayor
speak
Webster?
second.
No, I think we've said all along that all the courts are going to remain down there, and I think this just reemphasizes the fact we're not going to just let this go to hell, that we're going to continue to maintain them. And what was the total bid?
$192,000.
$192,000 we're going to spend on those courts. So it's not like we're going to walk away from them if and when we would move the center over to the, to the inside of town.
Yeah, and just to add to that, regardless if we move or stay, those courts need to be redone. They're cracked and everything else. So we think this is an opportunity to improve another amenity down at that space for the residents and members.
Okay. Still in discussion? Seeing no more lights, Ms. McNear, your poll council.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Aye. Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Resolution number R14, 2022 passes with 7 affirmative votes. That would conclude ordinances, resolutions. We're in old business. Is there any old business to bring before council this evening? All right, new business? Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we go into an executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase or lease of property and pursuant to the city charter to discuss economic development matters related to the proposed redevelopment of the former Tri-County Mall site.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion at this point? Administration, do we anticipate anything coming out of that? All right. Ms. McNear, your poll council on executive session.
Mrs. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Council will retire to executive session, and we will be back. Council is back in session after retiring for an executive session. At this point in the agenda, we are at meetings and announcements. Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be no planning commission meeting in July.
Mr. Hawkins?
Finance Committee will meet July 20th at 6:30 PM in the Administrative Council Conference Room, or Council Conference Room.
Mr. Yule?
I'll defer to Joe Braun real quick.
Oh, you can do
Mr. Braun?
Okay. I was just asked by Mr. President, by you, to remind the members of council that prior to the meeting tonight, shortly before, I sent an email to certain members of council. You may be aware that we've been receiving a high volume of record requests, and a lot of it related to the individual council members, so I sent copies to you. And I was also asked to remind you that in the future, you should try to use the Springdale email accounts, because it's a lot easier for us to respond to these requests and track them if they're through the Springdale server. So I know you don't have a policy that requires that, but if at all possible, you should try to limit your communications to going through the city server, because it's very easy then for us to pull the data down and produce it. You know, we did produce some of the information today, and we anticipate producing some more tomorrow on a couple of different requests.
Mr. Braun, legally, there are some sticking points. I know that we have to basically state, guarantee that what we present when we're asked to present these items, that this is all we have, correct?
Yeah, and essentially, you know, I've tried to push all of my communities to only use municipal, township, county, school emails, so that we're 100% guaranteeing transparency and accountability. There is no rule in Springdale that requires that, unless council were to adopt a rule that would require that. But obviously, you know, we'll operate however council decides to mandate that, but the easiest way to do it is to run it through the server, and then we don't have to interrupt your day and bother you when it comes to these record requests and what people are looking for.
Since we're on this, let's kind of stay on this topic just a minute. Mr. Jacobs, you?
I was just going to mention rules and laws. Next meeting will be, but I can wait.
Hold that just a
Yeah.
second. Ms. Weisskopf?
I had a quick question, because when I got on council, we all got city council, like we all got the springdale.org. I was under the impression that that was what we were supposed to use because of like sunshine law stuff, and like in case anybody were to request anything. That's why I thought we were supposed to be doing all of our city business out of our city email. Is that not correct? And if so, how do we change that so that it is, so that everybody's doing the same thing? I don't want to end up messing anything up. I want everybody to have information if they ask for it.
Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I agree. The simplicity of having the Springdale or using the Springdale.org account makes it a little bit easier for your council-related business. Easier for us to maintain, certify the accuracy of a public records request. And those email accounts are all available to everyone. And to dovetail off that, we've taken another step to put in a phone number for each elected official, so that they don't have to use a personal cell phone number or a home phone number if they don't desire to do that either. So we have that through the voice over IP phone system the city uses, so that's available to you as well. We can get you set up on that.
Mr.
Hold on, real quick, I have a follow-up. How does that work? Like, can we have that to where it goes to our, can it be designed to work and go to our cell phone, or
Yes.
how does that work? Is there a voicemail
Correct.
system?
So there's an app that you would download on your phone. We would get you set up with your Springdale credentials and then assign that phone number to that app.
And in that vein, it's very easy. I've been doing it for a couple months now, something like that. And it was flawless.
It's convenient, and when you call someone back, it comes up the city exchange so that they'll know that somebody from the city is calling them back.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. How do those other communities manage the fact that business happens outside of those designated email addresses? Do they continue to send those requests to those elected officials to confirm there isn't additional information? We've been using private email addresses and phone numbers in Springdale forever. Even in transition, do you still go back and ask them if there's anything else? Because it seems like you'd still have to.
Mr. Braun?
Yeah, I always will ask if something relates, for instance, to Mr. Vanover. I will always send the request to you. But what has happened in these other communities is that they now immediately respond to me and say, everything I do through the email that's through the city. Or if they say, did you send, a message to someone? No, I don't communicate by text message, or, whatever means. But it has eliminated, and it takes a while to phase out, but, it's something, I guess, that we become creatures of habit, which means that if we're used to using our springdale.gov email account or .com, however we set it up, then we're going to begin to do that. It just depends on what level of transparency you want to have as a local elected body. And the easiest way to do it is the way that we're talking, which means that, if you have a laptop or a server that are destroyed or stolen or begin not to work, it could create a problem for you. The city automatically backs ours up in a certain way, and we always have it. We don't need a password if you die to get into your account so that we can answer some record request. There's lots of scenarios we can think of, but again, it's not required right now. It's a recommendation. To Ms. Weisskopf's point, there's a little bit of trust involved in it, but at the same time, we're managing it right now. Obviously, though, the preferred method would be for all communications to be routed through your city email or number.
And does that include text messages? You mentioned the voice over IP. I know I probably do. In terms of resident interaction, I get just as much text as I do emails. How would that be managed in the situation you've described?
For that, I'm not exactly sure how a text would be captured, if that is a function of the system. Let me look into it a little bit more. There is an offshoot of the system that operates kind of like Microsoft Teams. If you're familiar with that, to kind of capture those threads. I don't know if that will allow if you're not already on the city system, if that will allow you to come in or transfer out. So let me look into that as well as another option.
I think that'd be interesting. I mean, I know with Teams it's difficult if you're in an outside domain for it to be internal for Teams. That's a challenge they've worked with before. I'm sure other people have solved it. I know I would suggest, if we're thinking about switching, that at least in a bridge we consider defining what the requirements are as policy for people to take on if they were to use personal technology instead of using the Springdale site. I know I personally had a lot more trouble with the Springdale email servers, even getting them working, than I've ever had with the systems I use now, and it's very easy for me to conform and comply with these requests. So I know my preference would be to just say what those requirements are and then have an opt-out, as opposed to requiring everyone to go through a city service. And I don't know if that's me.
I agree with what Jeff said.
Well, I mean, I'm probably the most old school of old school, and I made the rollover 6-8 years ago, and I haven't. I did the rollover 6-8 years ago, and did not have any issues. And if the good news is with like the laptop, if I had, matter of fact, I was on the phone with Anthony today because some sort of update, then it wouldn't allow me to close out Outlook. And we got it figured out. It just took another reboot, it was short of the universal hammer disconnect. But I personally think that there are, especially in the day that we are seeing more and more records request that, and we have been bit once before on that, I think it's a very smart thing to do, but that's me. Ms. Weisskopf?
Thank you. I've always used the Springdale one since I came in, just because it was given to me, and I thought that's what we were supposed to do, so I just kind of did it. If that number had the capability of text messages, that would be even better, because that way when I get messages in, I would know what is city business and what is personal. That would be helpful. I don't know how that works. If that's a possibility, that'd be awesome. Anytime that we can get people to streamline to us and make it easier if there are records requests or whatever, I'm in favor of whatever's going to be easiest for the city.
Mr. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we notified in some way if we're involved in one of these record requests? Because as far as I know, I've never been involved with one. How would we know if information about an individual council person is being asked information on us?
Mr. Braun?
So we send that to your city email address, and if you check it, it will be in there.
So nobody cares about me.
You left out.
Well, not quite. One of the most recent ones
he
was
sent an email
you were
about it.
named. Mr. Anderson, myself,
Mr. Jacobs,
Mr.
Mr. Hawkins.
Jacobs, and Mr. Hawkins were all named on this most recent records
So-
request.
The other thing to know is obviously the city email works if you check it, so you do have to be careful about that. We typically don't, I will say this, if it's just related to one council member, I usually do call them by phone. I've called individuals up here at the dais before, and I still try to follow up with that. I will tell you, Mr. Ramirez, the one that I was referring to, I think you were out of town when that one came in last week, and I know you were not here for the special meeting. You'll find that in your City of Springdale email address, but the other thing to remember is depending on what the request is, if it's between two people, you can also pick up a copy from the recipient versus the sender. So, but either way, if you check your Springdale address, that's typically where I send your communications to, because it's coming off a private server from my firm, and I don't want to have to search for it. I want it to be able to go to the city server, so.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add, I appreciate we're trying to normalize things, which is why I suggested, or standardize things, which is why I suggested having a policy for what you'd have to comply with. And I think for most people, it might be easier and more efficient. I can, just speaking for myself, it would not be easier for me, technology-wise, interacting with the residents if I had to switch and use city services. But I may be the exception. I come from a tech background. And, the most recent example with the records request, there was a substantial request. It only took me a few minutes to comply with the entire thing, and I'm confident everything's in there. Because I have access to the back end, it's actually easier for me to know that everything's there instead of relying on multiple places to search, so.
Well, to me, the legal ramifications are what concerns me the most, because it's against the city. Primary, secondary would be us individual. But, Mr. Ewell, if you'll check on the text messaging and how that flows, I think, give you 2 weeks to think about it. I think that we need to standardize in some form. Quite honestly, my first blush is we have the city email there. We go to it. So I will plan. They can put on the agenda. We will have this discussion again and call the question to where we want to go with this, because I think the time has come that we need to address this issue. for everybody's, as they would say in the insurance industry, care, custody, and control. So, all right. All right, still meetings announcements. Mr. Jacobs, let me go back to you.
Rules and laws, next meeting will be held on the 20th. We were unable to meet tonight.
Okay. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting has been canceled for this month. There's currently no applications.
Okay. Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to let everyone know, Civil Service will be meeting tomorrow, July 7th at 2 p.m. in the council conference room. And just to dovetail off Mr. Hawkins' request for the Finance Committee meeting, we'll be discussing a potential purchase of a new ambulance. We received some updated information within the past couple weeks of production times have now grown from 16 months to 20 months. And they are also facing a 7% price hike if we don't get an order in by the end of this month. So cost of materials and fabrication have gone up dramatically, and they anticipate August 1st a new or 7% price hike. They've locked us in until July 21st or 22nd. So we'll be presenting all of this to the Finance Committee on July the 20th prior to the council meeting. If the Finance Committee chooses to move forward with that, we will have legislation prepared, and it will probably have an emergency clause associated with it to meet that timeline and to lock in that price and get into queue for a 20-month build-out. So just to make you aware.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Primarily from Parks and Rec, just wanted me to share that in July, it's Parks and Rec Month, and celebration of Springdale Community Center is providing free outdoor and family activities such as storybook, stroll, pet photo day, art in the park, and playground picnic day. In addition, the concert in the park, Thursday, July 21st, 7:30, performance, one that we know, right, Ms. Sullivan-Weiskup. The Remains, classic rock and modern hits. They seem to be a popular group there. Also, Teen Summer Splash Pool Party. That's Friday, July 22nd, 8 to 10. That is for 5th through 8th graders. And finally, happy to report that over 110 members have joined in the last month thanks to the Silver Sneakers Medicare membership program. Thank you.
All right, let me go back just a second. Mr. Braun, that the email question, that falls under the rules of council, correct? Yeah. That would be our direct, so.
That's a council rule, yes.
It would just be basically a motion and a vote from that point, correct?
Yeah, or you could also, if you're just going to say you should have to use city email, that could be a motion. You could also do a policy, like was suggested by some others here. That would be a policy you would vote on and adopt. Maybe send that through a committee or something like that. Maybe rules and laws or something.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to suggest that is maybe that's something that Rules and Law could look into to come up to see if there's an option there for a policy or change instead of doing it kind of ad hoc. It seems like a big change to me, but maybe it's just because I live in the tech world. But maybe that's something they could look at first and then come back to us with ideas.
Well, we'll get the answers from Mr. Yule. We will revisit this next meeting, and we'll decide what avenue we'll shift from there. All right? Okay. Communications from the audience. Is there anybody in the audience like to address council for any reason?
Hello, my name's Katie Wells. I live at 11486 Bernhardt Court. I actually just wanted to follow up and see if this is live streamed today or where we're at. It is? Perfect. And then the second thing I've been doing a lot of reading online, and I've seen that communicating and community outreach is brought up a lot. So I found something that is not my idea. I can't take credit for it. This was actually something I read back in November of 2009. This was from Julie Matheny. I found it online, and she had a really good idea. It said there. Let's see, I'm gonna find where it starts. Where we could have council representative night, where we can convene and have the forum to provide feedback, suggestions, concerns, and yes, criticism about various issues that may be affecting our city. I really, really think that's a good idea. So I just wanted to know if we've ever planned that. Quarterly, monthly.
Well, I can speak personally. I had district meetings in the past. Some were, well, actually the last one was probably held over at Heritage Hill Elementary before we got blockaded, I guess. Some have been well attended, some not so attended. You know, it's always an option. There's nothing preventing it. I know the mayor did a mayor's night in for several years, and it just, for lack of attendance, fell on its face.
For sure.
So that's pretty much up to, basically would be the district people. You know, the at-large can piggyback in, but that would be, you know, their prerogative in their jurisdiction.
Thank you. Maybe, yeah, I think that's a really good idea, though. I know a lot of people I've spoke with would love the opportunity to hear more. So live streaming's awesome. But yeah, if we could maybe plan a couple meetups, like community outreach programs, that'd be awesome. I'd appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Still any communications from the audience?
My name's Rie Haratzika. I live on Kemper Road. The website is not easy to use at all. When I went on the ordinance, the code of ordinances, I couldn't find what I was looking for very easily unless I knew what ordinance. Well, when I reached out to try and find out what ordinance number it was, I wasn't really I'm sorry, I really don't do good in front of a microphone, but it's not easy to use, and I don't think that information should be gatekept like that. The search engine, no, not search engine, the search option, it doesn't work when you just use the general internet. Sorry, it needs to be fixed or updated. We live in 2022.
Mr. Yule?
I appreciate your input, and we are actively redesigning a new website as we speak. So it does have a lot more search interfaces and is a lot more user-friendly from a user perspective. So we're in the very infant phases of it right now with just what it would potentially look like and where things would go. But hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have something that we can present to council to show them and hopefully move forward with that project. But the intent is to make it a lot more user-friendly and to have more information accessible to the user.
I just do better not in front of a microphone. I didn't mean to mention that when I reached out, someone did tell me that. I just think that it needs to be done sooner rather than later. Sorry, but thank you for giving me that information earlier.
Yep. It takes about 6 months. I mean, and it's not all our end, it's some of their back-end work as well that has to, and then data migration, so, but we will get it out sooner than later, for sure.
All right, we're still in communications from the audience. Second call. Third and final call, we'll close communications from the audience. Mr. Hawkins, we go with you for an update on legislation still in development.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you review your internal memorandums, item number 1 was addressed with Resolution R14, 2022, a resolution authorizing an agreement between the City of Springdale and the State of Ohio for the Capital Appropriations Award to repair and rehabilitate outdoor tennis and basketball courts at 11999 Longview Avenue. Item number 2 was addressed with Resolution R13, 2022, a resolution adopting the 2023 tax budget of the City of Springdale for the year January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023, and that passed the 7-0 vote as well. All other matters were forthcoming.
All right, and staying with Mr. Hawkins, a recap of legislative items requested for next council meeting.
There's a request for an ordinance authorizing contributions to certain health accounts of full-time employees of the city of Springdale related to the city's health insurance plan and declaring an emergency. And there also potentially will be legislation for a new ambulance with an emergency clause. And that's it, unless there's anything else from council.
Administration, we good? All right, we have item 15 before us.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Council's adjourned.